I am a professional attorney, do a lot of family law, and I do a lot of probate, guardianship, and estate planning. Uh, all my work is generally focused around families in general, but I have specific focuses towards LGBT families and individuals, and military families and individuals, because I'm also a VA accredited Veterans Benefit and Compensation Attorney. Well, the interesting thing about political leadership is that there are no prerequisites to their being elected into their capacities other than certain age and residency requirements and citizenship requirements. This is not like other types of jobs where you got to submit a resume to show that you're qualified and you have a certain amount of experience and or education that makes you qualified in that role, that makes you suitable for placement in that capacity. And so we wind up with people leading our community who have absolutely zero experience in managing governmental budgets. They may have zero experience in administrative types of management issues. They may have zero experience in interpreting legislation or ordinances. And so, yeah, there's absolutely no qualification. So it's not unusual to have somebody elected to a position. And in fact, it's most likely to have people elected in positions that wherein they may have never read the ordinance and they may never read the ordinances that they're governing by. And so they depend heavily upon the general counsel's office to assist them in counseling them about what the ordinance is and what they're trying to do and how to make those changes. And so voters are not that well educated because we think that a politician can make change about something that we don't like without realizing that there may be something in the ordinance that prohibits that. But we're going to elect this person because they say they're going to try to do that without really acknowledging or realizing that they may not be able to do anything at all about that. It may violate some other type of law on a statewide level or a federal level or something like that. Well, general counsel's office for city council, one of their main jobs is to help draft the legislation. And so what they did was they took some legislation that was introduced from the community, and then general counsel's office kind of modified it so that it would best enter into the codification of the city ordinances. It's just like state statutes. Municipal ordinances are written a certain way and codified a certain way. So when you want to make sure that something has an effect, you go in and you amend. Usually you're amending something that already exists or you're introducing something individually. So you work it into the proper portion of the codes. They decide how that's going to be done. Then they decide what language is going to be stricken, which language is going to be added. So what often happens a lot of times is we as lay people look at it and we, oh, they took this out. They're trying to discriminate against us, when in fact maybe they're trying to limit discrimination against us by taking that out. They read it as non-lawyers, although I think we have one city council member who's a lawyer, and that's Lori Boyer, and they read it a certain way. And then you have city council members who are not lawyers who read it totally an opposite to that. I went to law school for quite a while. I've been practicing for a long time. I think I understand how to interpret law, and the law's not always black and white. And when a statute's written and it's not written well enough, it's open to interpretation, sometimes misinterpretation, and sometimes it has a bad latent effect. But when you think you're doing something sometimes to be helpful, you may actually be creating more problems than it's worth. And you may be creating more problems than the one that you were trying to prevent. And so sometimes it's good to listen to folks. But if you don't, that's why we have case law, because the case law sits there and says, oh, well, they screwed this one up. This is not statutory intent, but this is a latent effect of it. And now they're stuck with this result. And if they want to change it, they have to go back and modify it. There's a responsibility in our community to continue the conversation and make sure that the full inclusive language is part of the conversation, that all of it is. But what I also find too is that there's a weakness within our community to responsibly articulate that part of the discussion. There's still room for improvement on articulating that. I'm working on documents for several months, probably about 6 months now, that we still have problems agreeing about how to articulate that. There's a lot of disagreement about that, and that there are people who are Chi-identified who think that they're the only people who are the authority on it, and that they demonstrate an unwillingness to listen to others who may have more experience in discussing the issue than they do, because they've recently come out as T and they've just recently become a part of the movement. And it doesn't mean that they're wrong or right or whatever. It doesn't mean the other folks are wrong or right. But one thing that I have learned is that there is a way to discuss this in a fashion that doesn't further alienate the listener. And that as much as one would like it, that all the proper terminology got used, that sometimes you're going to have to make some compromise and use terms that you're not always that comfortable with, but you can accept, that are not derogatory and offending, in order to help the listener understand better and not confuse them as much. They're much more comfortable with the issue, and they're much more willing to listen. And one of the things that I have followed up with the candidates about, which I don't know that anybody else has, but somebody said when they found out I was doing it, they went, that's good. That's a great question. That's a great, thing to do. I not just had the conversation with them about a non-discrimination ordinance that's inclusive of the LGBT and T, both on gender identity and expression, but I also asked them about how willing they are, once they're elected into their respective positions, to continue to be reachable by us and be willing to be educated by us throughout the process as they sponsor a bill. So far, I've had 100% response that they definitely want to be available, because they definitely want that assistance, because they all understand they do not know how to properly express themselves with that, and they're more than willing to be educated. Shavar Oren has done some great work with We Are Straight Allies to continue the education of candidates. A lot of the candidates are participating in that education process that she's provided for them. Been receptive to me when I've offered to come and have one-on-ones with them and talk to them about inclusive language, things they should say, things they should not say, things they should never say. Right. Things that no matter how good an ally they are, it's never going to be acceptable for them to say. These are good people who really do want to understand the issue, who realize they may never understand it as well as we do ourselves, but they really, 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 really want to do the right thing. And they want us all to understand that. It's going to result in men dressing as women so they can go into bathrooms to rape women or small girls or stuff like that. Just like the recent legislation introduced in the Florida House of Representatives to make you match your birth sex, before you can go into a bathroom. I can only imagine the backlash that's going to occur when you have all these big burly men going into women's bathrooms now because they were born as women. I mean, I think the first time that legislature has to go into a man's bathroom with some high-heeled female coming into the bathroom, he might rethink his position on that.